and will now pass it along to Josephine and Jared to talk about trauma resources.
Okay, hey y'all, my name is Josephine and I am a third grade math and science teacher in HISD. And I joined One Houston really because I'm invested in the process of building coalition and organizing, and because I believe in the power of advocating for our city's youth, especially.
And I'm Jared Braun, and I teach fifth grade in SBISD. I joined One Houston to help make positive changes to the school system. I believe this happens by allowing the people most affected by a problem having a greater voice in solving that problem. I wanted to help in giving voice to those communities so we can have meaningful resolution to the problems we see in the education system today.
Yeah, so we know Houston to be a resilient city. Still, access to trauma support resources is an issue that greatly impacts the way that our city is able to move forward and heal following a traumatic event such as COVID-19. So I guess, really just trying to think about how we can use those trauma support resources to support families now and following this entire thing that is COVID-19.
So, trustees, this isn't the first crisis that Houston has endured. As Josephine said, we're a very resilient city. The question I have would be, what can we do to become more proactive about how we handle these situations, and especially around the supports that we put in place for traumatic events like this? We can start with Trustee Hernandez or Villaseca, if you want to start from the HISD perspective.
So I think that access to counselors every day is something that's essential, right? Making sure that our students have the skills, the coping mechanisms to deal with crises like this doesn't just start during a crisis. It starts way before. And so having counselors available at schools on an everyday basis and a regular basis for our students, and that being something that is taught is something very important, I believe, so that if it's this crisis or a hurricane or whatever it may be, students are able to better cope with that because they already have those skills. They've been taught those skills beforehand. I think there was a second part to your question that I don't remember.
Oh, I think just being more proactive about the services that we provide, even when we are in an event like this, or in a hurricane, or in any other kind of major event that we might be seeing.
I know that HISD had a form that a parent could fill out if their child was in need of counseling services. So I believe that the counselors that were already at schools are doing the work with the students that they were partnering with before. And if there has been any other needs from a school that didn't partner or didn't hire a counselor or a social worker at that particular campus, then some of the other counselors that we had on staff are trying to fill that need. And I know that there's also some other outside organizations, some nonprofits that are helping as well.
Trustee Villaseca, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
Well, I think it's really, really important that our students do have the opportunity to engage with a counselor. They might not recognize that they need to have somebody to talk to, so I think it's important that the counselors are able to reach out to them and have those conversations, engage really where they're at. I also want to point out, though, that a lot of trauma, at least we know with Hurricane Harvey, a lot of that, the PTSD doesn't come until like 6 months later. So when we do come back, we need to make sure that we are really doubling down on the counseling services that we're providing to our students.
And then Trustee Butler, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that, or move the conversation in a certain direction?
So I think specifically when it comes to being proactive, one of the best ways to being proactive is to actually go back and take a needs assessment as to see what have we already done, right? So what were some of the things that we ran into for these barriers right now? And so let's put those programs, into place. So one of the things that our district is actually doing that I really what I really do love about it is that we've actually said, hey, all of our counselors who are already at camp, who are giving services to kids, whether it be CIS or our own counselors, please reach out to these kids, like that first week in March, before we knew that we were going to be closing schools, right? See what their needs look like, go back and look at your caseloads. And then next month, at the beginning of April, they were calling kids and saying, hey, do you have food? Do you have clothes? Do you have lights? Do you have water? What do those needs will look like? And then we talk to them about, health, making sure that they're healthy, right? Because being at home, school isn't always the best place for our students, right? Some of our students come from some very troubled homes. So was it really safe for them to be at home versus school, right? And so how do we actually make sure that we have those needs? And then fourth thing I'm really glad our district is doing is that we have a virtual parent classes. So we've got virtual parent classes. Our parents are still learning, online and learning about their own mental health, how to help their students, how to help their kids at home, how to make sure that, they're giving them those extra resources, spending that extra time with them, doing some anger management, helping to deal with the ADHD that builds up of just being cooped up in your house, right? Those fear things. So I think we need to make sure that we're giving those kinds of resources.
Thank you.
So, it sounds like in both HISD and ALEAF, there, that access to counselors and mental health supports have already been considered, and that in many ways they're already being implemented by schools. So I'm just wondering, in the same way that nutrition services ensures that entire families have access to food, is access to counselors being guaranteed in the same way to families, or do you know if it's specifically catered to student access to trauma supports? Trustee Villaseca, anyone can start, but is counseling mental health supports available to entire families, or is it geared just towards students at particular schools?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure if Trustee Hernandez has anything. I'm not sure. I would hope so, but I'm not quite sure if that, if addressed, even though I would agree and I would support that if a family is in need of some services, that the whole family, their needs are addressed rather than just the student, right, on its own. But I'm not sure where that stands.
So the emergency constraint around social and emotional needs does provide webinars, and I believe that the wording around that is on families that log in and not necessarily students. I'm reading it right now.
And what was that you just referenced? What document?
The emergency constraints. So we are having a meeting about the emergency constraints and passing them on Monday. So one of them is around food, one of them is around social and emotional learning, and the third one is around education and having our students learning. And this is on the HISD website. It should be, right, for Monday's meeting. But I believe that the wording around that is about families logging in, at least for the webinars that provide social and emotional learning or support.
Yeah, so for us in ALEAF, well, it is the whole family. So I'm a parent. I've got 2 kids in our school, so I can log in as a parent, or I can have each one of my kids log in, or we can log in collectively as a family and all take the same one webinar training or that same parent seminar together as a family. That is one thing that that I really am always thankful for, is that we don't just solve just the child, that we know that the child is a microcosm of that whole entire household. So we may be trying to address that child's needs specifically, but those other social what issues that are happening in the household are going to affect that family. So if that, child is being stressed out or trying to figure out like, hey, my mom and dad can't pay rent, but I need to go and get this second job or this third job, right? So how do we address all of that? So as a district, ours is definitely for our whole entire families and not just the student itself.
So we're going to go ahead and just ask one last question, just like a quick response. Is there anything that is available that maybe isn't being advertised at the moment, or maybe people are not as aware of? Like you had mentioned the counseling service document where the counselors should be reaching out possibly to families that might need it. Is there something that can support their social and emotional needs outside of school right now that maybe we just don't know about and you wanted to just say?
Off the top of my head, what I can think about is I know that wraparound specialists are still working, and they are the ones that have access to or know more, have a lot more knowledge around the nonprofits that provide the social and emotional skills and resources for students. So if there's a student who needs it or a family who needs this type of support, I would say reach out to your wraparound specialist, and if you don't have one, there's other wraparound specialists available. You can definitely call the HISD hotline that is available, and they can put you in touch with the wraparound specialist that is that has that individual knowledge for your area, for nonprofits that are close to where students live.
And then Trustee Butler, is there anything that you wanted to add with services that might be going underutilized at the moment for emotional and social and emotional services?
So I would say to definitely reach out to like Mental Health for America. They've got some great resources, whether it be for students, for families. It's in all kinds of different languages that they can help you out with. I would say them who will definitely, like communities and schools, can definitely go and refer you, whether you're a signed up person for it or not. You can reach out to them right now. They're basically servicing any kid and any family that has any issues right now.
Awesome. Thank you, trustees. I'm going to pass this off to Manoj and Destiny to close it out for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Josephine and Jared, for leading that. To end our session, I just have a final closing question. And it's pretty large, but I'm really curious to hear, what is your greatest hope at this very moment? What is your greatest hope at this very moment? Trustee Butler, you can start, followed by Trustee Villaseca, and then Trustee Hernandez.
So for me, my greatest hope is that even in the midst of this crisis, that our families and our students, they're surviving, and that they're at least being able to even maintain at this moment. And my greatest hope is that, yes, when we go back to schools, that our students, a traditional learning, that our students and our families are ready to truly will not be that whole year and a year and a half behind. Just because I know that, like in the summertime, we talk about summer slide, but this is a really, 6 months almost of being out of school potentially, in that traditional learning. So that is my greatest hope, that our students are still reading, they're still being engaged, and that they're just maintaining, if not trying to grow. I will be appreciative and hopeful of that.
Thank you.
My greatest hope is that our students are going to be able to come back. Well, hopefully, look, like I just want to make sure that we're, as leaders, we're focused on these priorities right now, that we're making tough decisions, and that we're going to set up to be more resilient because of this. I know that each and every day our students are using their daily life skills to be able to be stronger, to make it through, right? Like our community is a resilient community. And I know that we're going to come back out of this stronger, but we need to be prepared, because there's going to be some supports that need to be in place. We need to be strategic. We need to make some decisions on the budget. This is in the middle of a budget, and we need to be able to be prepared to fight for more, because public education has been taking a hit in the state for several years, for decades now, right? And local governments are also going to be fighting for different stimulus money that's coming in. Some of the stimulus money is being routed through the state first, and the governor gets to keep 10% of it. That's what's stipulated in the CARES Act, right? And so even with that 10% that's left over, how is it going to be used, right? And to be able to follow the money into question. And then again, just to make sure that we're planning strategically, asking the tough questions, and doing our due diligence to make sure our kids are going to be fully supported now and afterwards as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
For me, my greatest hope is that, there's a lot of untraditional learning happening right now at homes, a lot of practical learning, life skills, a lot of cultural learning going on. And my greatest hope is that those skills are valued when school starts again. We know that we're going to be going to school again at some point, and the skills that students are learning right now may not be the traditional skills that they would have learned, but I'm hoping that when school starts again, those skills are valued.